Welcome, dear friends, to a heartwarming tale of love, redemption, and the power of forgiveness to heal old wounds and forge new beginnings. Enjoy the story. Tyler Prescott, the dashing 35-year-old CEO of Prescott Industries, strode through the gleaming halls of his Manhattan office, his mind focused on the multi-million-dollar deal he was about to close. As he rounded the corner, a soft sob caught his attention. There, huddled in the shadows, was a young woman in a cleaning uniform, her shoulders shaking with quiet tears. Intrigued, Tyler approached her. "Excuse me, miss? Is everything all right?" The woman's head snapped up, her wide, doe-like eyes glistening with tears. "Oh, Mr. Prescott, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you." She scrambled to her feet, hastily wiping her face with the back of her hand. Tyler held up a reassuring hand. "Please call me Tyler. And you haven't disturbed me at all. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." The woman, who couldn't have been more than 25, offered a shaky smile. "I'm fine, really. Just a little overwhelmed. I should get back to work." She grabbed her cleaning cart and hurried away, leaving Tyler staring after her, a puzzled frown on his handsome face. Unable to shake the image of the crying cleaning lady from his mind, Tyler summoned Mrs. Evans, the matronly supervisor, who had been with the company for over 3 decades, to his office. As she settled into the plush chair opposite his desk, Tyler leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. "Mrs. Evans, I was hoping you could tell me a bit about one of your employees. A young woman, probably in her mid-20s, with long dark hair and big brown eyes. I found her crying in the hallway earlier." Mrs. Evans's face softened with recognition. "Ah, that would be Sophia. Poor dear. She's had a rough go of it, I'm afraid." Tyler's brow furrowed with concern. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Evans sighed, stirring a splash of cream into her tea. "Well, for starters, the other girls in the cleaning crew, especially those from the sales department, are always giving her a hard time. They tease her about her clothes, her lack of makeup, you name it. But Sophia, she just takes it all in stride, never complains, just keeps her head down and works twice as hard as anyone else." "That's terrible," Tyler murmured, a flicker of anger igniting in his chest. "No one deserves to be treated like that." "I couldn't agree more," Mrs. Evans nodded. "But that's not the half of it. You see, Sophia's mother is very ill, and with Sophia being the sole breadwinner, well, let's just say they're struggling to keep up with the medical bills." Tyler leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He knew all too well the toll a sick parent could take on a family. An idea began to take shape, a way he could help Sophia without bruising her pride. Tyler made his way down to the cleaning supply room, his heart hammering in his chest. He felt a bit ridiculous, sneaking around like a thief in his own building, but he was determined to help Sophia, even if it meant bending the rules a bit. He spotted her wallet sitting on a shelf, a battered leather thing held together with duct tape. Glancing over his shoulder to make sure he was alone, Tyler reached for it, his fingers trembling slightly as he undid the clasp. As he slipped a crisp $100 bill into the billfold, something caught his eye, a small gold cross dangling from a delicate chain. Tyler's breath caught in his throat, a flood of long-buried memories rushing back to him. It was his father's cross, the one he always wore around his neck, the one that had been missing since the day Tyler's mother died, 20 years ago. 20 years earlier. The rain lashed against the windshield as Andrew Prescott raced through the streets of New York, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. In the passenger seat, his wife Elizabeth moaned in pain, her face pale and slick with sweat. "Hang on, baby," Andrew murmured, his voice tight with fear. "We're almost there." In the back seat, 10-year-old Tyler huddled against the door, his eyes wide with terror. He'd never seen his mother so sick before, never heard his father so scared. Suddenly, a car swerved in front of them, its taillights flashing red in the gloom. Andrew cursed, jerking the wheel to the side. But it was too late. The sickening crunch of metal filled the air as their car slammed into the other vehicle, sending it spinning off the road. Tyler screamed as their car skidded to a halt, smoke billowing from the hood. Through the cracked windshield, he could see the other car, crumpled against a tree, a woman trapped inside, her face streaked with blood. Mommy! A little girl's voice cried out, high and panicked. Tyler watched in horror as the child, no older than himself, was thrown from the wreckage, her small body landing in a crumpled heap on the side of the road. Andrew was already out of the car, running towards the woman. She reached for him through the shattered window, her fingers clutching at his cross necklace. "Please," she rasped, her voice thick with pain. "My daughter. Help her." But Andrew was already backing away, his face a mask of anguish. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "My wife. I have to get her to the hospital." He turned and ran back to their car, leaving the woman and her daughter behind as he sped off into the night. In the back seat, Tyler huddled into himself, hot tears sliding down his cheeks as he tried to block out the sound of the little girl's screams. They made it to the hospital, but it was too late. Elizabeth Prescott died that night, leaving her husband and son shattered in the wake of their grief. And though they never spoke of it, the guilt of what they'd done, of the lives they'd destroyed, haunted them every day since. Tyler's hand shook as he replaced Sophia's wallet, his mind reeling with the revelation. All these years, he'd tried to bury the memory of that awful night, to convince himself that it had all been a terrible dream. But now, with the proof of his father's sin dangling before him, he couldn't hide from the truth any longer. He was just about to slip out of the supply room when a soft gasp made him spin around. There, in the doorway, stood Sophia, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. "Mr. Prescott? What are you doing with my wallet?" Tyler's mouth went dry, his tongue feeling like sandpaper in his mouth. I wanted to give you a bonus for all your hard work, but I didn't want to embarrass you in front of the others." Sophia's brow furrowed, her gaze flickering to the wallet in his hand. "I appreciate the thought, but I can't accept your money, Mr. Prescott. It wouldn't be right." She held out her hand, and Tyler reluctantly placed the wallet in her palm, his fingers brushing against her skin. A jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them, and for a moment they just stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken tension. Then Sophia cleared her throat, breaking the spell. "I should get back to work. Thank you, though, for the offer." She turned and walked away, leaving Tyler standing there, his heart hammering in his chest. He knew he should let it go, should forget about the cross and the horrible secret it represented. But he couldn't. He had to know the truth, had to confront his father, and finally lay the ghosts of the past to rest. That night, Tyler paced the floor of his father's study, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Andrew sat behind his desk, his face lined with age and worry as he watched his son's agitated movements. "Dad," Tyler finally burst out, unable to contain himself any longer. "We need to talk about the accident, the one that happened the night Mom died." Andrew's face drained of color, his eyes widening with shock. "Tyler, I don't think now is the time." "No," Tyler interrupted, his voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. "We've put this off long enough. I know about the cross, Dad. I know what you did." Andrew's shoulders slumped, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Son, you have to understand. Your mother was dying. I had to get her to the hospital. I didn't have a choice." "You had a choice," Tyler exploded, slamming his fist down on the desk. "You could have helped that woman, could have saved her daughter. But you just left them there, left them to suffer while you ran away like a coward." Andrew flinched as if he'd been slapped, his eyes filling with tears. "I'm sorry, Tyler. I'm so sorry. I've lived with the guilt of that night every day since it happened. But I can't change the past, no matter how much I might want to." Tyler shook his head, his anger giving way to a bone-deep weariness. "I can't do this anymore, Dad. I can't keep pretending like everything's okay when it's not. We have to make this right somehow. We owe it to that woman, to her daughter. We owe it to ourselves." Andrew was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant and haunted. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You're right, son. It's time we faced up to what we've done. But how? It's been 20 years. That woman, her daughter, they could be anywhere." Tyler's mind flashed to Sophia, to the cross that had brought all these buried secrets to light. "I think I might know where to start." The next day, Tyler called Sophia into his office. The young woman entered hesitantly, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for hidden dangers. Tyler's heart twisted with guilt, knowing that his actions the previous day had likely shaken her trust in him. He gestured for her to take a seat, then sat down across from her, his hands folded on the desk. "Sophia, I owe you an apology for yesterday. It was wrong of me to go through your personal belongings, no matter my intentions." Sophia nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Prescott. I appreciate your honesty." Tyler took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he had to say next. "There's something else I need to talk to you about. It's about your mother's illness and how it might be connected to my family." Sophia's brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand. What does my mother have to do with your family?" Tyler closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him like a physical thing. 20 years ago, the night my mother died, my father and I were involved in a car accident. We hit another vehicle and a woman and her daughter were injured. The woman, she was trapped in the car, begging for help. But my father, he just drove away, left them there so he could get my mother to the hospital. We never knew what happened to them, never tried to find out. But now, with what Mrs. Evans told me about your mother's condition, I can't help but wonder." He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Sophia stared at him, her face a mix of shock and dawning understanding. "You think my mother was the woman in the other car?" she said slowly, her voice trembling. "You think your family is responsible for her illness, for all the suffering we've been through?" Tyler nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. I know there's nothing I can say that will make up for what we did, but I want to help in any way I can. I'll pay for your mother's treatment, make sure she gets the best care available, and I'll do everything in my power to atone for my father's mistake, to try and make things right." Sophia was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant and thoughtful. Then, to Tyler's surprise, a small, sad smile touched her lips. "Thank you, Mr. Prescott, for your honesty and for your offer of help. But the truth is, my mother's illness isn't your family's fault. Not really." Tyler's brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand. If my father hadn't left her there, if he'd gotten her help—" Sophia shook her head. "It's not that simple. You see, my mother wasn't in that car by chance. She was chasing after my father. He was cheating on her, and she'd gotten a call from the woman he was with. She was so angry, so hurt, that she took his car and went after him, even though she barely knew how to drive. The accident, it was just as much her fault as it was your father's." Tyler stared at her, his mind reeling with this new information. "But why didn't you say anything before? Why let us believe that we were responsible?" Sophia sighed, her shoulders slumping with the weight of her own guilt. "Because it was easier, I guess. Easier to blame someone else for our problems than to face up to the truth. And because, deep down, I wanted someone to pay for all the pain my mother and I have been through. But that's not fair, not to you or your family. You've been carrying this guilt around for 20 years, and it's time to let it go." Tyler felt as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, a weight he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. He reached across the desk, taking Sophia's hand in his own. "Thank you, Sophia, for your forgiveness and for your honesty. I know we can't change the past, but maybe, together, we can build a better future." 1 year later. The sun shone brightly on the rooftop garden of Prescott Industries, casting a warm glow over the gathered crowd. Tyler stood at the front, his heart full to bursting as he watched Sophia walk down the aisle, a vision in white lace and satin. Beside him, his father beamed with pride, his eyes misty with emotion. In the front row, Sophia's mother sat, her face glowing with health and happiness. The treatments Tyler had arranged had worked wonders, and she was now illness-free, a living testament to the power of love and forgiveness. As Sophia reached the altar, Tyler took her hands in his, marveling at the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. "Sophia," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "when I first saw you crying in that hallway, I had no idea how much you would change my life. You've taught me so much about strength, about resilience, about the true meaning of love. I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else by my side." Sophia smiled up at him, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "Tyler, You've given me so much more than I ever could have dreamed. Your love, your support, your unwavering belief in me. It's more than I ever thought I deserved. I can't wait to start this new chapter with you, to build a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibility." As they exchanged their vows, their words carried on the gentle breeze, a promise of forever sealed with a kiss. The crowd erupted in cheers, a sea of smiling faces and happy tears. Mrs. Evans, resplendent in a flowery hat and a beaming grin, hugged Sophia tight as she welcomed her into the family. "I always knew there was something special about you, my dear. You've brought such joy to all our lives, and I know you and Tyler will have a beautiful future together." The reception was a joyous affair, filled with music, dancing, and the happy chatter of friends and loved ones. As Tyler spun Sophia around the dance floor, he marveled at the incredible turn of events that had brought them together. To think, it had all started with a chance encounter, a fleeting moment of compassion that had blossomed into so much more. Through the trials and the tears, the secrets and the revelations, they had found each other, two lost souls finally coming home. As the night wound down and the guests began to depart, Tyler and Sophia snuck away to the rooftop garden, stealing a quiet moment together under the stars. They stood hand in hand, looking out over the twinkling lights of the city, their hearts full of love and gratitude. "I never thought I could be this happy," Sophia whispered, leaning her head on Tyler's shoulder. "I never thought I could find someone who would love me so completely, so unconditionally." Tyler pressed a kiss to her temple, his voice soft and tender. "You deserve all the love in the world, Sophia, and I intend to spend the rest of my life giving it to you." And so, as the moon rose high overhead and the world slept on, Tyler and Sophia held each other close, their love a shining beacon of hope in a once darkened sky. They had weathered the storms of the past and emerged stronger, their bond forged in the fires of forgiveness and understanding. Together, they looked to the future, a blank page waiting to be filled with the story of their love. And though they knew there would be challenges ahead, moments of darkness and doubt, they also knew that they would face them hand in hand, heart to heart, always and forever. For in the end, that was what true love was all about, not the absence of hardship, but the strength to overcome it, to grow and flourish in the face of adversity. And with Sophia by his side, Tyler knew that he could face anything, that their love would be the guiding light that led them home, no matter how dark the night. So they stood there, two hearts beating as one, their love a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. And as they looked out over the city, the world seemed to glow with the promise of new beginnings, of endless possibilities waiting to be discovered. It was the start of a beautiful adventure, a love story for the ages, and Tyler and Sophia couldn't wait to see where it would take them next.